So welcome everyone. I am so excited. So Dawn Barron is one of our, how should we say it, originators of the L&D Cares group, and has been doing just wonderful work really, particularly around the outreach. And as we look to what are those learning careers, what are the things that we can do early on that, that learning really is an option and not a default.
Good way to explain it.
So excited to have you here.
Yeah, well, I am excited to be here. As Liz has said, I have been involved in the L&D Cares group, I'd say about since it started, but my experience with L&D stretches long before that. I was able to work with the Association for Talent Development beginning, I guess, about 20 years ago. And so it gave me a great introduction into the community of L&D professionals that I have grown to love. Something, though, that came out of our work with L&D Cares was to really understand where all of your passions came from and how you started in your careers and how you ended up in your careers. And then as we started to really talk to some of the individuals who were displaced by the pandemic, we were able to get into conversations about what they really wanted to do. And in some cases, many of them were not just displaced, many of them just wanted to be in another place. And so it allowed us to start having that conversation about, why did you start in L&D? What did you love most about it? And what would you love to see more of in your next career choice? So we started to explore that a little bit. And before I get into what some of the things that we found, I wanted to describe why this became so interesting to me. So I was a math major as an undergrad. And math is not very typical to say, I was a math major and I ended up working with people. Most math majors, many math majors end up being very technical, being very accounting oriented. I realized that my math brain was suited to solve problems, and the problems I wanted to solve were the dynamics between people and trying to find ways in order to tease out some of the passions of individuals and then match them up with other individuals so that we could have stronger teams. And I loved doing so that the outcome was about creating more confident, ready individuals. And a lot of that happens through education. And many of us who are on this call today or who are involved in this initiative have some similar passions. How can we be doing work in order to empower others to be better, confident, stronger at what they do? So when we started to hear from the L&D Cares group about how they got involved in L&D and what they wanted to do, we found out that many of them didn't enter the L&D profession until 7 to 10 years into their careers. And this is not unlike some of the data that we are seeing out of the State of the Industry report at the Association for Talent Development. And still to this day, and from 20 years ago, we were seeing that there was a gap between the choices that we make about our career at the high school level, and then the college level, and then the grad school level, and then first career, second career, oh, now I'm in L&D. And one of the things we started to think about was, what could we be doing differently that makes L&D a choice for some of our own children? And what if our younger version of ourselves at 18 knew now that this career existed? Would we have made those choices? So my first step was to ask a lot of young professionals what it is that they're doing right now and what would entice them into a career with L&D. So I started with a group, many of you may know, it was originally with Elliott Macy and now it's with the Learning Guild, called 30 Under 30. And I interviewed a good number of them. And one of the things that I found all of them said was that they wanted to be teachers as young women and young men. They always wanted to be helping others learn something. But in all cases, none of them wanted to do it in a classroom. And they may not have known that necessarily, but some of them tried going into a classroom and teaching, and they said, no, this isn't for me. And others always wanted to have a job in corporate America, but didn't know how they could take that passion of wanting to be a teacher and actually apply it to a corporate America position. So they found themselves in a learning role. Some of them went to grad school after college to figure out exactly what they wanted to do and figure out what skills they wanted to develop or that they enjoyed most, and then found careers in that. Others during college said, okay, I'm just going to go the traditional education route, and then I'll find a job that is in corporate But there was certainly a gap, a mismatch with the skills that they got in college and high school that were more on the education side, typical academic education side, versus what they were being asked to do in corporate America. So I asked them what types of skills they wanted to develop earlier so that they felt they could be more effective in their jobs. And instructional design, brain science, people dynamics, all of these skills came up as areas that they wish they were able to develop earlier. And then I went back to a number of the people in our L&D Cares group, many of them within which I share demographics. So I have been out of college and grad school for a good 20, 25 years now. And what would I have done differently? Or what skills would I want to now acquire in order to be more invested in L&D? And a lot of those skills were similar. So we started to gather all of those skills that we feel would be important for a young person to have in order to have the background and foundation that we appreciate as L&D professionals. But then there's another aspect to it. We now have many young professionals, young children, teenagers, who do something that we never had the luxury of doing: create content easily. They do so with their phones. They do so on social media, and they're good at it. And they pay attention to the statistics. They pay attention to the analytics behind it. They're very in tune with what others are doing. And in many cases, we've probably all seen this if we have children, on TikTok, they're actually teaching or they're learning. They're seeing what others are doing, whether it may be a dance, a life hack, cooking, whatever it may be. They're learning and sharing those learning experiences with each other. If you really think about it, it's kind of what we'd all love to see in corporate, where someone who's at a desk says, oh, I just learned this really cool skill, whether it's in Excel or web development, or they were just in a session and they really felt like they had a breakthrough. What if they could record that, share that with all of us, share that with their company and say, look what I just did. Now you try and share us your feedback. So these are all really great skills that in many cases, we don't know where to put when it comes to young professional, a teenager, when they want to make decisions about college, their career, and what they want to do. So we ultimately, as a project with L&D Cares and the Close It Summit, wanted to come up with some early job descriptions for entry-level L&D, so that we could entice a younger group of individuals to say, you can use all of these social media skills, all of these creation skills that you have that maybe right now they're looked on as waste of time. Not a waste of time. They're great skills that we want to harness and bring into the organization and create the stickiness that they're creating with content, create the curiosity that they have for learning new and different things. And so if we can take those skills, abilities, and that willingness, create jobs that will utilize those skills and add the skill development opportunities, instructional design, learning and development science, the structures that we all appreciate and recognize when we meet somebody who's been in the L&D profession for a long time. If we can bring that to the forefront earlier, then we can have a group of young professionals who have the skills and desires and foundation to really expand the L&D community. And that would be a major win for corporate when it comes to engagement, leveraging technology. Right now, those two things are big deals for many of us. We find out that we do all of this great work when it comes to learning, and we're still struggling to get that level of engagement. It's been a plaguing issue for us for a very long time. Additionally, so much technology out there, but we tend to use just a percentage of it. What if we had this young professional group that knows how to use technology, not at all afraid of technology, ready to use it, ready to share content, create content, and really make these learning experiences a sticky and experience that proliferates throughout the organization. These are the types of things that we want to see happen, but we want to start that earlier. And we want to create job opportunities for our young professionals to be able to take on, choose as a career, and then begin to grow inside of an organization. Not at the age of 40, but at the age of 21 or 22. Can you imagine the potential that all of us would have had we started and had those skills and opportunity earlier? So one of the things that I wanted to address with the group today is basically the title of this presentation. I wanted to be a teacher, but instead I'm a. So if all of you, I see a few hands coming up, who wanted to be a teacher and found themselves in L&D? If you can use the chat and just kind of say, yes, this is something that's where I sat, but I ended up taking a different path. I see lots of thumbs up. Yeah, and yep, university professor level. A teacher now and wanting to transition. Many of you may have read a few of the publications that ATD has put out regarding teacher as a leader. And those are exactly the skills that I think many of us possess, that we want to have this ability to lead people through knowledge and education. And so being in that teacher role has always been attractive to us. But how can we take those skills and traits as a teacher and move them into a different capacity, move them into a corporate capacity, be a team leader? All of those things are very attractive skills, but being able to place them and find yourself, that's a challenge, and it's a transition. So many of the people in the L&D Cares group are in transition right now. And in spite of the fact that the pandemic kind of took us all for a loop, and in many cases, nobody wants to be without a job. But I've also seen, our entire group has seen, that being displaced also allows for some level of reflection. And we're able to look back at the careers we have, the skills we have, and the skills we don't have, and the careers that we didn't have. And how can we create a better experience for our next career choice? We're seeing people say that working in student affairs, working as a university professor, working in a classroom, these are all things that we know that we love the idea, but how do we gather the skills? So now I have one other question. What skills would you have wanted to develop earlier in your career? If you can just chat those two. Great. So we have public speaking, coaching, networking, group facilitations. This is why I love this group of L&D for professionals, because it's all about connecting with people. And it's so good to hone in on those skills. But I will tell you, I don't think I've met an L&D professional that didn't innately have some of those tendencies, which allows for, I think, that lead in, I want to be a teacher. I also said I wanted to be a teacher in high school. That was underneath my yearbook photo. I want to be a teacher. And I never ended up being in a classroom. But the idea of being able to connect with others, that's what really inspired me. The idea of being comfortable in front of people and sharing, I love doing that. It's something that gives me energy. I'll be the first to say, my day today has been so crazy, but I looked forward to this moment where I was able to just sit in this room with you, even though it's virtual, and share. And that's, I think, what keeps us all going and has us all excited about the career that we're in. We have this ability to create great content, source great content from many different places, and then tell a story that we can put out there for many to hear and many to grow from. One of the things that I think all of us in L&D can really understand is the idea of a story, and that much of our stories and much of our learning experiences are intentionally done to fill a human void. And if we can connect with people and fill that void, then we have a win. Our job, I think we put on ourselves is, how can we do that for many? While the experience of doing that one-on-one is very important, we know that in a corporate environment, we only have certain time and resources. And so we have to be able to come up with these learning experiences that really hit the mark and connect with many. And it's why we know so many different learning preferences and how we try to touch on so many of those components. All those are great skill sets for our young professionals to learn, so that when they're creating content, when they're creating these learning experiences, they're very cognizant of the fact that people learn differently. And I think that's one of the things that has impressed me most about my conversations with some of these young professionals. They are already so much more inclusive than I think we ever were. They are so privy to what's going on out there with technology, the news, society, because they're getting fed so much information all the time. They may, in fact, be better processors than we are because they've grown up with it. And all of that they're able to then instill into what matters most to me? What do I think is important? And what can I create and share so that others can learn a little bit more about me? And they're not shy about doing that. Technology has also allowed us to extend beyond extroverts. Many of the extroverts in our classrooms when we're stand-up trainers are the ones that will raise their hand and agree to do role play or always participating. What about the introverts? Technology and virtual learning and social media has allowed the introverts to have a voice. So that's another component of some of the abilities that our young professionals have and some of the awareness that they have. It gives many more opportunity in order to create and share. So let's just take a look here. We have a few more comments that have come in. Yeah, so I would love to hear, and this is an area that we're going to continue to explore as I continue to do research on the L&D side. But what has inspired you in many cases to make the transition? So you've noticed that you were in an academic setting. You've noticed that you were doing what you do in terms of teaching others. But now it's your chance to say, hey, here's what I want to do. And we need to open up the profession of L&D, and I honestly believe that we are. It's one of the things that I think I have been most proud of our profession from seeing it through from 25 years ago until now. I remember actually being at the Association for Talent Development, back then it was called ASTD, and we talked about how we needed to change the term training because training was for animals. I'm sure many of you can remember those conversations. And we've come such a long way where now we're talking about wellness and how learning and development is part of a wellness initiative. How I can be a better me because I am willing to learn and develop, and how my company is willing to provide learning and development. I think that is a massive leap from where we were. So with all of that, I absolutely am so happy that I had to have the chance to be here with you all today and just talk a little bit about some of the insights that I've gained through interviewing the L&D Cares group, through interviewing the 30 under 30, and then interviewing some of those who are just still deciding, what is it? I'm in high school. What do I want to do? And helping them to understand that some of the skills that they're using, not necessarily on the academic front, but outside, social front, that is actually going to be a skill that they can implement in an L&D career. We need to get our employers to start looking at those entry-level positions and saying, we want to recruit this talent and curiosity and social media understanding and the ability to create content and start bringing it into our organizations earlier.
I love it. So well said. Thank you so much, Dawn. And I think that it really is that piece of how are we rethinking and exploring those opportunities, that there's a lot more out there than we even consider. So I love it. Thank you so much.
And one thing I would say, again, we've talked about this a few times. Those of us who do have children who are now especially working or learning from home and starting to explore what choices they want to make in high school, what choices they want to make in college. I would highly encourage you to describe the careers that you all have and the lessons and skills that you've learned and those that you didn't, and say, here's something you should consider. Because it's just, when I look back and I think about the choices that I had when I was younger, it felt very limiting. Teacher was definitely one top of the list for a girl, right? Oh, I could be a teacher. So that's what I wanted to do. I liked people, I'll be a teacher. Do I want to be a nurse? Okay, I'll be a nurse. Things like that. We now have an opportunity to create careers. We're at a point where we don't even know the type of careers that are going to be available to some of our own children. So we have this opportunity to introduce them to a career that has been very satisfying for many of us, but can also truly leverage some of the great skills and talents that our children have.
Beautifully said. I love it. And if you want to practice exactly how to do that in today's talent fairs, that's what we're going to be doing, is looking at how did you get to whatever job that you're in. We're going to be doing basically some peer interviewing around what were some of those experiences. What did you take along with you? What did you learn, and how did that help you in your next position? And what are you looking to learn? What are you curious about? And going into that level of curiosity and approach, rather than just looking at the certifications or the after the fact, but really Okay, what can we grab in there?
Yeah, and not to take a technology angle here, but many of us in organizations have the learning management system, which we look at and we say, okay, this is compliance. It's aimed for compliance. It's aimed for certifications. In contrast, many of you may also have a learning experience platform, and that is much more about user-generated content. It's easier to share content, put things on social media, take things from social media. That's kind of the way that I look at maybe the L&D professional from my generation versus the L&D professional that could be coming out of, 18, 19, 20-year-olds. They are much more willing. They don't know not to create and share. Why would we want them to conform to a compliance mode? And we have to learn it's okay to create and share. It's okay for it not to be perfect. It's actually better for it to be authentic and imperfect. And then we all learn from each other. So that's where it's just, if you are a technology L&D person, can look at the two of those because you know what those are. And you can say, okay, that's me, that's them. How do we come to a compromise so that we're working together?
I love it. That is awesome. Yep, exactly. So with that, create and share.
Yes, be curious.
Be curious. Wonderful. Well, thanks so much, Dawn. Awesome. And
thanks for having me, Liz.
Yeah, and we will see each other at the tables and see you guys probably in the next session and later on. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Night.